This morning we talked about adjective clauses and relative pronouns as the subject of the clause. That's where we started. We had this sentence on the board: the girl who won the race is happy. And we talked about the fact that this is where our adjective clause is, okay, who won the race, and that this, the relative pronoun who and the relative pronoun that, are used because we're talking about a person, okay, and the person here is the girl, okay. So relative pronouns that are used when we're talking about people are who and that, when we're talking about relative pronouns as the subject of the clause. We also talked this morning about where an adjective clause goes. If we say the girl is happy, who won the race, this adjective clause is too far away from the noun that it is modifying. Okay, and remember, modifies means describes. So we want to make sure that this adjective clause here gets put in right after the noun that it's modifying, so that it looks like it does in A. The girl who won the race is happy. Or the girl that won the race is happy. Here we were looking at what happens with the verb in this in the adjective clause. And this became tricky when we looked at what noun was being modified. Oh, it's too late in the day. So here we have the noun that is being modified or being described by the adjective clause. Okay, the adjective clause is here. That contains adjective clauses. Okay. So you want to make sure that here we've got our subject, right? This is still the relative pronoun functioning as the subject in the sentence. Okay. And now what follows next is the verb. You have to make sure, and this was the part that I wrote really low on the board so that Megumi and Jang probably couldn't see it at all. I'm sorry about that. is that the verb in the adjective clause needs to agree with the noun that it's modifying. Okay? So the verb in the adjective clause needs to agree with the noun that it's modifying when we're talking about adjective clauses that have the relative pronoun as the subject. If we come over and we look at relative pronouns when they are the object of the sentence, we don't have that agreement anymore. Okay? In this example, okay, we have the subject we. Okay? So we is going to agree with the verb that it follows, saw. In this example, well, these are both past tense examples, so maybe not the greatest to look at, but still, here we have a subject and we have a real subject in I. Okay? So that subject and this verb are going to agree. Okay? So now we don't care about man. Okay? Because here this verb needs to agree with this subject. If we go backwards, here we don't have a real subject. So this verb needs to come out and agree with the noun that it's modifying out here. We then went on to talk about relative pronouns that function as the object of a verb. Okay? So these were the sentences where we saw that the relative pronoun that, which, who, whom replaced an object of a verb. Okay, so when we say the movie was great, we saw it last night. It is the object of this verb saw. And in this case, when we create a sentence that uses an adjective clause, this word it gets replaced by the relative pronoun that. Then we talked about how we have choices. If we're talking about a thing, we can use that, we can use which, or we can decide to use nothing at all. Because we already have our subject here, it's possible to omit the relative pronoun altogether. And I said that we often do this in speaking, and sometimes we do it in writing and sometimes we don't. It's sort of just up to the writer. Here was a second example of that. The man was Mr. Jones. I saw him. Okay, so him is the object of this verb saw. Okay, and him gets replaced by one of these relative pronouns. Okay, so if we say the man who I saw and we add in this word him, we can't do it because we can't have two things in the sentence that are performing the same job. Okay, so we don't use this object in the adjective clause sentence because we have words like who, that, or whom when we're talking about people. Okay? So before we talked about things was that, which, or nothing. When we're talking about people, we have four choices. We can say who, whom, that, or nothing.